on the defense side, but you can also do it as a cop. You can also do it as a prosecutor. The search for justice is not limited to one side or the other. And that's also part now of what I said about my role as prosecutor. I told my assistants that these were the goals of our office. I said, now, I want you to listen to this completely because this is important and these are not platitudes. I says, our goal is to do justice, which means that what we do is to convict the guilty, set the innocent free, and protect everybody's constitutional rights in the process. If that sounds too liberal, if that sounds too high-blown, if you don't think that this is real, if you think this is lip service, then put in your resignation now because you really don't belong here. And that's the way that every prosecutor's office ought to run. But I suspect that the real problem in the system, and by the way, if you have questions about my case, I'll be happy to fill that in later on, but just suffice it to say that I went through it, the jury found me not guilty. Afterwards, I walked in, the jurors started giving me a round of applause. I went around with handshakes, hugs to everybody. On 3 occasions now, my wife have had dinner with the foreperson and a couple of other members of the jury. They saw through this garbage immediately, and it was garbage, but I had to go through it. But back to my main point, that I'm not so worried about prosecutors because there's plenty of literature, there's plenty of guidance that says that that's the way that we should act. What I'm really worried about is the rest of the system. That the appellate courts have such an aversion to claims of actual innocence, to claims of new evidence, that you really get one and only one trial. And this is what I've seen in real life, is that people get accused, they get brought in. Sometimes it's appointed counsel, sometimes it's counsel to whom they pay $20,000, $25,000, $50,000. And the biggest reason why you have some bad results in the system is that defense attorneys drop the ball along the way. That in spite of the ethical requirements that we do everything we can for each defendant, there are attorneys who actually have kind of a gradation that the more you pay me, the more I'm going to do. And that is morally bankrupt, that is ethically wrong, but it's part of the reality. But the bigger reality is that once you get convicted, your chances to get reversed on appeal are very, very slim. And now with the modern philosophy, you see it in Congress, and it did, I'm a Democrat, so at least I can say that more Democrats accept my point of view, but there are plenty of Democrats who do this also. It's almost like Democrats on the war in Iraq, that you can criticize Bush all day long, but there were plenty of you guys who voted to make that happen also. And it is true with the criminal justice system, is that you have people who are just too cowardly to stand up and say that things should be different. And you have people who truly don't understand the system and just honestly believe that every trial has to be like, it's almost like perfect. I think it's because we learn about trials when we were little kids, and it's almost like, you know, you learn about Jesus, you learn about the synagogue, you learn about religion of some sort, and at the same time you learn about courts, you learn about justice, and the same kind of infallibility that we kind of invest in our religious beliefs because it's taught at the same time. You think, well, the justice system has to be pretty darn good also, if not infallible. But when you've actually seen a trial, it's like the old thing about legislators making laws. It's, you don't want to see sausage made and you don't want to see laws made, and a lot of trials you don't want to see because what you think is this long, painful, reasoned process happens, and it happens a lot, but there are a lot of cases in which it doesn't. And once that's set in stone, that becomes your record that you take up on appeal, and appellate judges are very reluctant to overturn and grant new trials. So, getting back to where I started. Professor Zellman, I believe, is still attempting, after all these years, to put together that good statistical base to be able to say, with some degree of reliability, how many times, either on an absolute number basis or a percentage basis, you do have a result that is provably wrong. those cases should then open up the eyes of people in the system, prosecutors and judges, to say that mistakes can be made, and we have to have better rules, more liberal rules, to allow review of closed cases. Because if we don't, we're going to continue the way that we are, and that is, we're going to have a couple of cases every year that are going to be solved by DNA evidence in which justice is finally going to come about after years. You're going to have a couple of cases where some brave prosecutors make a decision to go against public opinion and stipulate to a new trial, and justice will occur in those cases. But in the vast majority of cases, you're just going to have these guys like in New York, you know, screaming, "I didn't do it because I don't even drive," and that person is going to be turned loose, thankfully, but so many others are not. And let me just, as I said, I want to finish now because I want to get involved in some kind of dialogue, because I don't know if anything I've said is of particular interest, but if it is, I want to go where your questions want to take this, and also because I've been a prosecutor on the federal level, the state level, I've been a defense attorney, hell, I've been a defendant. I can probably answer some questions that you have about the system from an inside the park point of view.
Paul,
yes.
This might be a good time to take a break.